You ever hear a sound so wrong it just bypasses your ears and goes straight to the ice in your veins? That's how it started. I was barely an hour into my weekend getaway at this rented cabin, miles from anywhere, hoping for some peace. Twilight was just starting to bleed through the dense pines, painting everything in shades of grey and deep blue. And then I heard it, a scraping sound. Like fingernails, long ones, dragging slow and deliberate across rough tree bark, just beyond the edge of the clearing. I tried to shake it off, Told myself I was just jumpy, city nerves adjusting to the absolute silence out here. Silence, It wasn't silent anymore. I forced myself to keep unpacking, arranging a few meager supplies on the dusty countertop. Canned soup, jerky, a thermos, pathetic defenses against. What? A badger. But the sound came again, closer this time. Scrare-ape. Pause. Scrare-ape. It wasn't frantic like some animal digging. It was measured, calculating. Okay, deep breaths. It's just the wind, maybe settling boards. Old cabins make weird noises. I actually laughed, a short, nervous bark of a sound that felt ridiculously loud in the stillness. But the scraping didn't respond to my laugh. It continued its slow, methodical exploration just beyond the walls. Scrape, drag, pause. Then a new sound started, lower, guttural. Sort of wet clicking, like large chitinous things rubbing together. That wasn't the wind. That wasn't wood settling. I scanned the tree line again, heart hammering. Nothing, just shadows playing tricks right. But the scraping and clicking were getting bolder, seeming to circle the cabin now. First on the left wall, then fading slightly as it moved around the back, then reappearing on the right. It was methodical, like it was inspecting the structure, searching for a way in. Or maybe just letting me know it was there. Letting me know I wasn't alone. The silence was worse, 100 times worse. Every nerve ending screamed, waiting for the sound to return. I stood frozen, listening so hard my ears hurt. Seconds stretched into minutes. Maybe it was gone. Maybe my bumping the table scared it off. Wishful thinking. Then came a asterisk thump asterisk. Not a scrape this time, but a solid, heavy thump against the cabin wall, right near the door. Like something large had just casually leaned its weight against the wood. My breath hitched. I stumbled backward, eyes locked on the vibrating door latch. Forget unpacking, forget pretending. This was real. Whatever was outside was trying to get in. The scraping became more frantic, interspersed with those horrible wet clicking sounds, closer than ever, like they were right on the other side of the wood. I looked around wildly. The cabin was basic, minimal. A heavy cast iron fireplace poker leaned against the stone hearth. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. It wasn't just the door anymore. The scraping moved up the wall, then onto the roof. Heavy footsteps, impossibly heavy, shuffled across the thin wooden shingles above my head. Dust rained down from the ceiling beams with each step. Scrare-ape, click-click, thud, scrare-ape. It was circling up there, prowling the rooftop like a massive bird of prey surveying its trapped meal. My heart felt like it was trying to beat its way out of my ribcage. Trapped. That's exactly what I was. Then a noise that made my blood run cold. A low, guttural screech echoed from the roof, followed by a violent tearing sound, shingles being ripped away. It sounded like huge claws were tearing into the wood structure itself. I backed into the farthest corner of the room, poker held out in front of me, shaking violently. The flickering overhead bulb chose that moment to spasm, dimming drastically before flaring back up, weaker than before. Great, just great. Suddenly the assault on the roof stopped. Silence again, thick and suffocating. But this time it felt different. Not gone, just paused, holding its breath. My own breath was ragged, loud in the quiet. I didn't move a muscle, straining my ears. What was it doing? Then I heard it, a faint, almost delicate tapping sound. Not on the roof, not on the door, on the window pane. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate. I risked a glance towards the window I'd looked out earlier. Couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Staring at that tapping talon against the glass. It wasn't frantic, just persistent. Tap, tap, tap. As if inviting me closer, or maybe just examining the barrier between us. The silhouette shifted slightly, and for a horrifying second I thought I saw the gleam of large, dark eyes reflecting the weak cabin light. But it was too dark, too obscured by the grimy window and the deepening night. The tapping stopped. The silhouette remained, a hulking shadow just watching. And then the light bulb gave one final, pathetic flicker and died, plunging the cabin into almost total darkness. Only the faintest moonlight filtered through the grimy windows now, barely enough to see shapes. My heart seized. The silhouette outside the window was gone, vanished into the blackness. But the silence wasn't empty anymore. It felt charged, dangerous. I could hear my own ragged breathing, maybe faint rustling from outside. Or was it inside? Paranoia gnawed at me. Where did it go? Suddenly, an explosive crash from the front door. Wood splintered inwards, the sound deafening in the small space. It was trying to break through. I scrambled away from the fireplace, heart leaping into my throat. Another crash, and I could hear the door frame groaning, cracking under the immense pressure. Heavy, rhythmic impacts now, like a living battering ram. Splinters rained onto the floorboards. Then, under the bottom edge of the door, something slid into the sliver of moonlight coming from outside. I didn't think, just reacted. I hefted the heaviest piece of furniture I could manage in the dark, the small wooden table, and hurled it towards the door with a desperate grunt. It hit with an unsatisfying clatter, probably doing nothing but making noise. The pounding stopped instantly. Silence descended again, more terrifying than before. Did I provoke it? Did I just seal my fate? I strained my ears, listening. Nothing. Not a scrape, not a click, not a breath. Had it given up? Gone away? Minutes crawled by. 10 minutes. 20. An hour maybe. Time lost all meaning in the dark, punctuated only by the frantic thudding of my own heart. There were no more sounds from outside. No scraping, no clicking, no pounding. Nothing. Just the natural sounds of the night forest drifting back in, the chirp of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl. It was over. Could it really be over? Relief warred with disbelief. Maybe it had lost interest, moved on. Or maybe. As the weak morning light grew stronger, illuminating the dusty chaos of the cabin, I finally lowered the poker, limbs shaking with adrenaline hangover. I had survived. Whatever that thing was, it was gone. I stumbled towards my duffel bag near the wall, desperate to just grab my keys and run, forget this place ever existed. My foot nudged something soft on the floor beside the bag, something that hadn't been there when I dropped it hours ago. I bent down, cautiously picking it up. It was a feather. You ever have one of those neighbors you just avoid? Not because they're loud or rude, just off. That was Mr. Sealers next door. Didn't talk much, kept to himself, except for his garden. His garden was insane. Bright greens, reds, blues I'd never seen in nature, blooming constantly, even when everything else was dead or dormant. It spilled over his low fence like a wave frozen mid-crash. Honestly, looking at it too long gave me this weird headache, right behind the eyes. The strangest thing, beyond the colors, was the smell. Especially in the evening when the fog would roll in thick from the coast nearby. You'd expect damp earth, maybe flowers, right? But Sealers' garden, it smelled sickly sweet, but heavy, thick, almost like rotting meat mixed with cheap perfume. It clung to the air, sometimes strong enough to make me gag if the wind shifted just right. Then came the sounds. At first I thought it was just the wind, or maybe plumbing from his old house. But it happened almost every night, usually after midnight. Low sounds, kind of wet and guttural, like something trying to clear its throat, but deep, resonant, almost subterranean. Sometimes a low, sucking noise, like pulling a boot out of thick mud, followed by a rustling that wasn't leaves. It came from the densest part of the garden, near that rickety old shed he never seemed to use. One night the sounds were louder. I couldn't help myself. I crept to my window. The fog was thick, but the moon was nearly full, cutting through it in weird shafts of light. And there was Sealers. He was out there, past 2 in the morning, moving through the fog like a ghost. He wasn't just gardening, though. He moved slowly, deliberately, almost like he was performing some kind of ritual dance. He'd stop, bend low over a patch of soil, stay there for a long time, then move on. As I watched Sealers that night, one of those moonlight beams hit a cluster of plants near him. They weren't like normal vines or bushes. These were thick, pulsing gently with a dark, leathery texture. They snaked around each other, less like plants and more like muscle, and the leaves, they weren't flat. They curled inward, segmented almost like fingers. Not exactly, but the suggestion was there, grotesque and undeniable. About a week later, Mittens vanished. She was Mrs. Gable's cat from 2 doors down, a fluffy ginger thing, friendly, always wandering. Used to sunbathe on my porch sometimes. Mrs. Gable was distraught, put up posters, asked everyone. I remembered seeing Mittens batting at something dangling over Sealers' fence just the day before she disappeared. One of those weird, dark green tendrils that seem to be constantly reaching, testing the boundaries. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, right? Mine was turning into this morbid, consuming obsession. I had asterisk to know what was going on over there. Was Sealers feeding those things? What was he feeding them? Were those sounds? Feeding sounds. Every theory felt crazier than the last, but the baseline feeling that something deeply wrong and potentially dangerous was happening next door just grew stronger. The smells, the sounds, the missing cat. Waiting until the fog was thickest, around 1 a.m. I crept out. My plan wasn't heroic, just get to the fence, peer through a gap, maybe see something definitive. The air was cold, damp, carrying that sweet rot stench stronger than ever. I hugged the shadows, moving slowly along the property line. Near the back, where the fence was older, more dilapidated, I knelt down. The ground felt strangely spongy, yielding. Just as I was about to pull back, terrified, I heard movement. Not the weird garden sounds, but human sounds. Footsteps, dragging. I froze, pressing myself flat against the damp ground behind a bush on my side of the fence. Through the slats, I saw Sealers emerge from his back door. He was wrestling with a large burlap sack, heavy, misshapen. He grunted with effort, dragging it towards the densest, darkest corner of the garden, near that creepy shed. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Sealers finished digging, rolled the sack in, and started covering it up with that awful soil, patting it down with the back of his shovel. Then he just stood there for a moment, head bowed, before shuffling back inside. The silence that fell afterwards felt heavier, more menacing. I knew I should leave, run, but my gaze was drawn to a small, dilapidated greenhouse attached to the side of his house, its glass panes coated in grime and condensation. I stumbled back from the greenhouse window, gasping, trying to process the nightmare I'd just witnessed. My foot snagged on an overgrown root snaking across the property line, one I swore hadn't been there minutes before. Before I could regain my balance, a thick, vine-like tendril lashed out from Sealers' side of the fence, snapping like a whip right beside my head. It missed me by inches, splattering foul-smelling droplets onto my cheek. The next morning, I almost convinced myself it was a nightmare. Sleep deprivation, paranoia. But then I looked out the window. Overnight, the vegetation from Sealers' yard had exploded. Thick, thorny vines, the same dark leathery kind I'd seen pulsing, had pushed asterisk through asterisk the wooden fence in multiple places. They were curling possessively around the fence posts on my asterisk side, reaching several feet into my lawn like grotesque green fingers staking a claim. I needed proof, something concrete, not just my terrified assumptions and fragmented glimpses through fog. Armed with garden shears and a sickening dread, I approached the part of the fence where the vines were thickest, where I thought I'd seen Mittens the cat last. Pushing aside the fleshy leaves, they felt unnervingly warm to the touch. I started cutting at the base of one particularly thick vine that had burrowed under the fence. My shears snagged on something resistant. That was it. I called the police. Explained everything, the smell, the sounds, the plants, the digging, the color. They came, talked to me, looked skeptical. They went next door, no answer. They peered over the fence, noted the unusual plant growth, but said there wasn't much they could do without probable cause to enter his property. An overgrown garden and a missing cat weren't enough. They left. And Sealers. I haven't seen him since that night he stood in the doorway. His car hasn't moved. Here's the part I can't explain, the part that keeps me awake more than the sounds or the smell now. A few days ago, I noticed an itch on my forearm, right where those droplets landed when that vine snapped near my head. I thought it was just a rash, maybe poison ivy from my own yard work, but it's spreading. It's not red and bumpy like a normal rash. It's brownish green, and the skin feels strangely thick, almost like bark. You ever hear a noise in your house late at night that just feels wrong? That's how it started for me. Not a creak, not the heating kicking on. This was a scratching. Thin, brittle, like long fingernails dragging slow across dry wood. And it was coming from directly below my bedroom floor, from the crawlspace. It only happened after midnight when the whole world was quiet and it sounded deliberate, calculated. For a week I tried my best to ignore it. Kept the TV on low, put a fan in the room for white noise, anything to drown it out. I'd lie awake, listening asterisk over the fan, straining my ears until my head hurt. Told myself it was the house settling, maybe rats. This place is old, fixer-upper special, you know, bought it cheap. Came with drafts, leaky pipes, and apparently this scratching symphony from hell. I even went outside during the day, checked the foundation vents. Then maybe 2 weeks in, the sound started to change. The high-pitched scratching lessened, replaced by something deeper. A wet, dragging sound like damp sacks being pulled across rough earth. And sometimes there was a soft asterisk thump, dull and heavy, like something dense falling or shifting position. That's when the smell started too. Faint at first, only noticeable near the floor vents. A thick, cloying odor, like spoiled meat mixed with damp soil and something else. I couldn't ignore it anymore. One Saturday morning, fueled by caffeine and a profound lack of sleep, I decided I had to face it. I grabbed the heaviest flashlight I owned, the big maglite, felt its weight like a club in my hand. I went down to the basement hallway where the main crawlspace access was. It was just a crude wooden panel, maybe 2 foot square, set into the damp concrete wall near the floor, held shut by a simple hook-and-eye latch. As I got closer, my hand shaking just reaching for the latch, I noticed something that chilled me to the bone. The little metal eyelet screw on the wooden panel. It was splintered. Not rusted through, not broken cleanly, but splintered asterisk outwards, like significant force had been applied from the asterisk inside asterisk. Wood fibers were pushed out around the ragged hole where the screw head used to be anchored. Taking a deep breath that tasted like dust and mildew, I flicked on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, making the airborne dust particles swirl like tiny insects. I crouched down, pulled the damaged panel away carefully. It came free with a soft scrape. The smell hit me full force then, gag-inducing, that rotten earth and spoiled meat stench. I shone the light into the opening. It was just black earth, crisscrossed with old pipes and support beams holding up the floor joists. I slammed that panel back in place faster than I thought possible, my hands fumbling. I didn't even bother trying to secure the broken latch. I just scrambled back up the basement stairs, my lungs burning, heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. That night, the sounds were worse than ever, not just scratching or dragging anymore. Now there was a low guttural sound mixed in, almost like a growl, but distorted, watery. Things escalated beyond just noises. One morning, I went outside to find one of the foundation vents, the heavy metal grill kind, completely ripped out of the concrete wall. Not bent, not pried off, asterisk ripped asterisk out. Pieces of fractured concrete lay scattered on the ground below it. The opening gaped like a dark mouth on the side of the house. Whatever had done that possessed incredible strength. Around the opening, in the soft dirt near the foundation, were strange impressions. Fear turned into a weird kind of angry determination. I wasn't going to be driven out of my own home. I grabbed the flashlight again, and this time, a sturdy shovel I kept in the garage. Back down to the basement, back to the crawlspace door. The smell was overwhelming now, a physical presence in the air. I wrenched the panel open and shoved the flashlight beam inside, the shovel held ready. I swept the light faster this time, heart pounding, adrenaline singing in my veins, deeper, further back than before. That was it. No more investigating, no more trying to understand, just containment, survival. I found some thick plywood sheets left by the previous owners in the garage, measured the crawlspace opening, cut a piece to fit snugly over the entire entrance, overlapping the concrete edges. I wasn't messing around with flimsy latches this time. The first night after sealing the crawlspace was blissfully silent, unnaturally silent. I sat in my living room, lights off, just listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the occasional car passing outside. No scratching, no dragging, no guttural growls or wet thumps from below. The oppressive smell seemed to have faded slightly, though maybe that was just wishful thinking or my nose getting used to it. Peace lasted exactly 2 nights. On the 3rd night, I woke up abruptly around 2 a.m. Not because of a noise initially, but because of that feeling again, the feeling of wrongness. Then I heard it, faint, muffled, but unmistakable, scratching asterisk. It wasn't coming from below the floor anymore, not from the direction of the crawlspace. It was coming from inside the wall. The main load-bearing wall that ran adjacent to the basement hallway where the crawlspace entrance asterisk was asterisk. I got out of bed slowly, quietly, like any sudden movement might provoke it. I crept out of the bedroom and into the hallway, straining my ears. Yes, Definitely inside the wall right there. Louder now. I put my hand flat against the cool plasterboard. It felt normal, solid. Wait, no. There was a faint vibration, incredibly subtle, but definitely there, humming against my palm along with the scratching sound. And maybe. Over the next few days, the sound moved. Sometimes it was in the wall between the kitchen and dining room. Sometimes, terrifyingly, it seemed to be coming from above, in the ceiling between the first floor and the attic space. The scratching became less frequent, replaced by something infinitely worse. A wet, sticky asterisk chewing asterisk sound. Slow, deliberate, punctuated by soft, crunching noises. Like something methodically gnawing its way through wood, insulation, maybe even old wiring. I haven't slept properly in. I don't know how long. Days, weeks, it doesn't matter. The realization hit me like a physical blow last night, listening to that wet chewing sound coming from inside my bedroom wall, just feet from my head. Sealing the crawl space was the stupidest thing I could have done. I didn't trap it down there. I just showed it the way asterisk in asterisk. It wasn't trying to get asterisk out asterisk of the house back then.